Bitcoin is speaking to us. Why are we not listening? Bitcoin is not telling us anything about Wall Street. Bitcoin is yelling and screaming. It's setting the alarm off. It's calling the bluff of the politicians. The politicians have accelerated their spending. The national debt has exploded by $850 billion in the last 90 days. These people are spending faster now than they were 90 days ago. Bitcoin is telling us, pay attention, the politicians are destroying the future, and that's why it's going up. And so during that same 3-month period where the politicians have added $850 billion to the national debt, Bitcoin is up 44%. Bitcoin is telling on the politicians, we're just all being too dumb enough to listen.
Pompliano begins by analyzing Bitcoin's post-halving cycle. Historically, the 6 months following a halving event see Bitcoin prices stabilize before a significant upward trajectory emerges. True to form, this pattern has unfolded again in 2024. After months of sideways movement, Bitcoin is now waking up, gaining momentum, and heading toward a year-end rally. Pompliano emphasizes that this growth isn't driven by groundbreaking news or corporate announcements. Instead, Wall Street is waking up to its underexposure to Bitcoin, sparking a wave of institutional buying. As these institutions allocate more capital, media coverage intensifies, creating a feedback loop of increased demand and price action.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
Sideways summer is over. We're going to come out of hibernation. Bitcoin will start going up in the next couple of weeks because it is time. I talked about how the halving occurred earlier this year. For about 6 months, we go sideways, and then this thing wakes up and up we go. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. Not because I got a big brain. We all know I got a small brain, but because if you look at all of the market cycles before, it takes about 6 months for that supply shock to kind of work its way out. And then you start towards the end of the year getting this demand increase, which we're seeing right now. And then it happens to overlay with a easing monetary policy. Of course, the asset is going to go up. And so predictable. Now, what is most fascinating to me is I am shocked at how fast it is going up. So I went back and I looked in 2020 and I said to myself, I remember that Bitcoin went up in November through March of 2021. And I said, but I don't remember the numbers. Let me go do some detective work. Bitcoin in the first week of November was about $15,000. By March of 2021, Bitcoin was at $64,000. That is massive appreciation in 5 months. And so I said to myself, well, what happened between the first week of November and the end of the year? Bitcoin went from 15,000 to 30,000. So Bitcoin's price doubled in the last 2 months of the year in 2020. I think that at the current pace, I extrapolate out with my little math on my Excel sheet, Bitcoin is actually on track if it continues on this path to double by the end of the year. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying based on the first 10, 12 days of the month of November, given the price appreciation we've seen so far, that is the trajectory it's on. And so what ends up becoming really interesting is that these candles, these days of appreciation, Bitcoin was up yesterday 13%. We're not talking about a $100 million asset. We're talking about an asset that is worth more than $1.5 trillion, is up 13% in a day. And the craziest part is there was no news. It's not like somebody that no one had ever heard of before was announcing they bought Bitcoin, or the Bitcoin Corporation was coming out and announcing earnings or anything like that. Instead, this is simply Wall Street realizing that they are under-allocated to Bitcoin. And so they start buying. As they buy, it brings more attention. Bitcoin was the #1 story on CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, etc. yesterday. And so I sat down last night, I said to myself, this can't all just be Wall Street saying I'm underallocated. They've known about Bitcoin. The ETFs got approved almost a year ago. What the heck is going on? And then that little brain of mine all of a sudden had a stroke of an idea.
Oh, thank God.
A little lightning flash went off. And I said to myself, Bitcoin is speaking to us. Why are we not listening? Bitcoin is not telling us anything about Wall Street. Bitcoin is yelling and screaming. It's setting the alarm off. It's calling the bluff of the politicians. The politicians have accelerated their spending. The national debt has exploded by $850 billion in the last 90 days. These people are spending faster now than they were 90 days ago. Bitcoin is telling us, pay attention, the politicians are destroying the future, and that's why it's going up. And so during that same 3-month period where the politicians have added $850 billion to the national debt, Bitcoin is up 44%. Bitcoin is telling on the politicians, we're just all being too dumb enough to listen. Donald Trump has a reputation for making people rich. There are plenty of things that people don't like about Donald Trump. There's plenty of things people like about him. I'm an independent. I don't give a hell about your tribalism. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, knock yourselves out. I don't care about that. I just call it how I see it. When Donald Trump walks in the room, a lot of people think he's going to make money, and so am I. And so when Donald Trump got elected, asset prices took off. The stock market went up, crypto went up, many other assets all go up. Why is that important? Because if Donald Trump walks in the room and says, I'm going to the White House, and everyone thinks this guy's obsessed with the stock market. Well, if you put a president in the White House who's obsessed with the stock market is probably going to go up. That's his metric. That's his KPI. What you measure is what you move. And his measurement is the stock market, so he's going to move it higher. And so if the stock market goes up under Donald Trump, it reinforces the reputation that Donald Trump makes the stock market go up. And so investors are saying to themselves, I previously was operating in an uncertain environment. I did not know whether the executive branch was behind me or in front of me. They were a threat to my capital. They continued to talk about raising the tax rates. They continued to talk about implementing unrealized capital gains tax. They continued to pursue policies that hurt my portfolio. Despite that, the stock market is still at or near all-time highs. But now somebody is walking into the White House who is pro-business, who is pro-investor, and has a reputation for making the stock market go up. And investors now feel safety, and they are allocating capital and going risk on because they believe that Donald Trump is going to make the stock market go up. It's already happening. He hasn't even assumed office yet. Imagine what is going to happen for the next 4 years.
Pompliano concludes with a bold vision. The United States has a unique opportunity to lead the world in Bitcoin adoption. By establishing a Bitcoin strategic reserve, the U.S. could secure its economic future and solidify its position as a global leader in the digital age. He advocates for a hands-off approach once the reserve is established. Buy the Bitcoin, hold it, and let it appreciate over time. Meanwhile, the U.S. should focus on deregulating the energy sector and fostering innovation to strengthen its economy.
Bitcoin's going up regardless of who became the president. But Donald Trump definitely is going in there saying, I'm going to be the pro-Bitcoin president. The big question right now is, will he actually deliver on the promise to establish the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve? The Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, there's been a bunch of different policies for it. But the idea is a central bank or a sovereign wealth fund, they hold different assets. And so central banks have been buying a lot of gold. Gold's up 35% this year. So why is that happening? Well, big pools of capital like central banks are buying gold. They're using it as part of their reserves. How are they actually going to store that wealth? None of them, for the most part, are using Bitcoin. And so this idea of a strategic reserve of Bitcoin is, if Bitcoin is going to be really valuable, and there's only 21 million of them, the United States should own some. Today, we have about 200,000 Bitcoin or so that we've gotten through seizing from different criminal cases, etc. And so Donald Trump made a promise that we were not going to sell any more of that. So that could be the establishment or the start of a strategic reserve. That strategic reserve is just Bitcoin is held on the United States government's balance sheet, and we don't sell it. If it goes up a lot, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We already have the Bitcoin, just don't sell it. Now, somebody like RFK Jr., he made a promise that he actually wanted to implement a plan to buy more Bitcoin. If you look at Cynthia Lummis, senator, she has come out and she said, well, hold on a second. Why don't we buy 1 million Bitcoin? And we can do that over the next 5 years or so. Here's how much it's going to cost. Let's go not just keep the Bitcoin we have, but let's actually go buy Bitcoin, put it on the government balance sheet. If the United States goes and establishes a Bitcoin strategic reserve, it will kick off a global FOMO like we've never seen before. Because every single nation state will say, if you're going to buy it, if you're the biggest economy, if you're the one who is the global police and you got Bitcoin, I better have some too. And so it's fun in games when you've got individuals fighting over Bitcoin in circulation. It's even funnier and more interesting when you've got corporations and financial institutions. But the final boss is the central banks, is the sovereign wealth funds. And when you have people showing up with trillions of dollars in assets and they say, we're going to buy this asset, this thing will skyrocket. Now, the question is, are the cycles over? Are we going to get these massive increases in price and then these big drops? If you had asked people over the summer, they would have said, no, I think that we just kind of grind up slowly and there's not kind of these big blow off tops. Based on the price movement of the last 2 to 3 weeks, there may be bigger blow-offs in the future than there were previously. And so if you get these blow-off tops, you still are going to get market drawdowns. But I was asked on Fox a couple of weeks ago, they said, what is the headline in 2026? And I jokingly said, Bitcoin crashes to 100K. Because that was like a dream of people when Bitcoin was at 20K.
I mean, I remember how excited everybody was when it hit 30K.
And so if it runs up and then it crashes to $100,000, people will be like, oh my God, it's so much fear or whatever. It's not even there yet. But that's the type of thing that has happened in this market. And so I don't know how the future will play out. But what I do know is that the United States has an opportunity to be the leader on a global stage when it comes to Bitcoin. There's plenty of people who don't like Bitcoin, but I believe that Bitcoin will continue to be the best store of wealth available to anyone in the world. And so if that is true, and the United States needs to store its own wealth, the same way that its people need to store their wealth, companies and financial institutions, then the United States should establish the strategic reserve. They should buy it, put it to the side, forget about it, don't touch it, don't trade it, don't try to get cute with it, and instead, let's go operate. Let's go deregulate the energy industry. Let's go build all the things we need to do to make the United States this amazing place to live and to be prosperous, and the Bitcoin will take care of the Bitcoin, and we'll be fine in the future.
Anthony Pompliano eloquently puts it, Bitcoin isn't just an asset. It's a mirror reflecting the inefficiencies of traditional systems and a beacon for the future of finance. The idea of a Bitcoin strategic reserve isn't just ambitious. It's a call to action for policymakers to recognize the transformative power of this digital asset. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our deep dives into the world of cryptocurrency and beyond. Let us know in the comments, do you think the U.S. should establish a Bitcoin strategic reserve?
Please like and subscribe my channel.